Thank you very much for your coming in Mongolian and the Korean sessions. And also thank you very much for your church and also BYU, Institute of Religion and the Symposium. This is a very great honor for me personally to share my understanding of religious sensitive conflict emerging in Korean society. Actually, traditionally, we don't have any conflict situations, even though historically we have some persecution history when first the Christianity came to Korea 200 years ago, and there's 100 years ago in the Protestantism. And also when Buddhism came, then also there's some conflict. But very recently, unfortunately, emerging of the religious conflict issues is coming out. Even though it's not to the large scale of the religious violence, but very sophisticated and sensitive, the conflict of religious matters. In the name of all the times mentioning about the separation of the state and the religion, especially the American, things. So it is very, very hot issues in Korea. So today I will talk about how does this situation has been changed in Korea. So my title will be about recent emergence of socially engaged Buddhism in Korea. Usually the Buddhists, they do not care much about worldly affairs. After more than 500 years, the ideology of the Confucianism prevalent in Korean society. So 500 years period, it's really long, the ideology controlling society, politics, and culture, even all our cultural DNA. So even though we don't have official religious institute of Confucianism, but when you go to the Korea, you can find out that strong trace, strong cultural DNA of the Confucianism. So you can only see a Korean Buddhism as the version of Confucianized Buddhism. And also you can see Korean Christianity, Confucianized version of Christianity. And also you can see the Confucianized version of shamanism, Confucianized version of other religious tradition, including your Latter-day Saints. So among the church leaders, still quite the Confucianized version of your tradition too. Okay, so Confucianism officially religious matters just 0.2%, but the 500 years Confucian ideology is still visibly influencing our Korean society. Even secularism, you can find out only the Confucianized version of the Korean secularism, public factors, both and hierarchical oriented to some extent. Anyway, so I will tell a little bit more about the landscape of Korean religious traditions. As you know, probably know, Korea 50 millions, okay? So among the 50 millions, more than half are the religious people, but quite luckily and also fortunately, balancing phenomena come out, especially Buddhism and also Christianity, including the Catholicism and the Protestantism. So the 22% is Buddhism, 18% is Protestantism, and there's a 10.9%, almost 11% is Catholics. Then Confucius, just 0.2%. Then the shamanism we cannot figure out because we don't have any demographic census about it. And there's NLM, New Religious Movement. Even though the LDS tradition is recognized as new religion in Korean society, but it's not calculated the numbers exactly. But usually Buddhism and the Christianity, even the Symposium of Religion and the Law, so basic assumption is about world religions, so-called big religions. even though it happened in your tradition-oriented university. But the basic assumption is about world religions in a conflict, so-called, not the small religious tradition matters. But I'm very wondering, how does religion and the law and the freedom of law, how they have covered about the range of the concerning about the new religious movement. So many new religious movement in East Asia, and also in China, and also Hong Kong, and also the Taiwan. I think there's numerous new religious movement. So I'm very, very wondering how the freedom of religion issues has been concerning about these issues. So the only until now, I hear much about the basic assumption about the big religious tradition and their conflict, their the violent context. So traditionally, okay, the Buddhism has been playing a role like a mother. Okay, even though something happened and very, very negatively in outside, usually Buddhist tradition take care of those things with silence. So silence is a very important metaphor in Korean society. Sometimes even though they felt offended, they do not say, especially Buddhist groups. So they just take them, then digest them. They do not care much about the external matters, especially caused by the Christianity groups. Okay, as you know, that the evangelical groups and also a little bit extreme, the Christian groups, they say much about their own religious faith, okay, by force sometimes. So even though they have done, but we have quite a good mother, bumpering and filtering their criticism of Buddhism and those other religious traditions. So quite a balancing. So Christianity is playing really role as like the father, but unfortunately, some cases quite problematic ways. But very, very recently, since 1970, after the Korean democratization has come out, many young Buddhist scholars and also Buddhist professors trained in the West, not only in the States, North America, but also in Europe. They begin to see how the Western countries handled for the case of the criticism on the religious matters. They just import their images of the Western handling of the religious conflict in the name of the law. Frankly speaking, I don't think that is really the rhetoric or metaphoric, the handling of the religious conflict traditionally in Korean society. But unfortunately or fortunately, whenever something, conflictual issues come out, law has been coming nowadays. So I felt that this is really big issues, a very near future. If we concern more about this kind of law issues, then I don't think that we can handle or we can really mothers flexible, concerning, and those fathers more critical self-reflection matters. Anyway, now there's this one. Then this has been sparked. Last government, the last government president is very, very faithful, a Presbyterian church elder. So the Hope Church elder. Unfortunately, he appointed almost 90% cabinet Christians. And also one of these ministers, unfortunately, he mentioned strongly concerning about Christian orientation policy. So many mothers like Buddhist monk, felt very uncomfortable, but they still played the mother's role. But the young generations, especially young scholars, are trained in the West. They begin to raise the voices against the government. So why it is too much Christian-oriented cabinet of the Korean ministry, and also why it is too much Christian-oriented things, this kind of thing. So the Buddhist, young radical, the groups, they begin to criticize Korean government. So in that time, firstly, in Korean history, laity, Buddhist laity, combined with Buddhist monk. Usually Buddhist monk, they do not accept Buddhist laity's criticism of the society and others. They usually take government policies. But this time is no exception. So first time in Korean modern history, really a lot of gatherings about the Korean Buddhist groups, then coming out and criticizing the pro-Christian oriented policies. But actually, in the content, it's not really the Christian-oriented policy, but because of, unfortunately, that cabinet ministers, the saying has been sparked for all kinds of images against the Christianity and also against the assumption of the government. At the same time, in that time, one of the Korean high school, most Korean high school and the middle school, we are too much also, unfortunately, indebted to Christian missionaries. More than the 70%, Korean, the high school and the middle school, founded by Korean, Christian missionaries from the Western countries, and also universities. So they produced a lot of intellectuals. Still, I think Korean society is very running by the Christian intellectuals and those Christian, people. For example, Prime Minister of the present, the Korean government, he is also very faithful Presbyterian pastor, and those key members of the dominant party in Korea. I think really key engine of those parties are the Christians, and also the opposite party also key engine comparing to the Buddhist group and those other religious groups. So in that time, a former government period, so one of the very well respected, very good, the high school, Daegwang High School, it is founded by Presbyterian, the denomination, and thus they produce a lot of good intellectuals, and those government officers. So one of the students, he is Buddhist, and those his mother, his family is all the Buddhist family. So this boy claimed that I do not want to go to the chapel. So he publicized these matters, in outside. So many politicians, not only the opposition party, even though they are Christians, but for the sake of just criticism of the dominant party, and also Buddhist young radical laities, they accused the high school. So this issue has been publicized everywhere, and also some sort of myth has been occurring. So what kind of myth? They say that they just give the ordinary Koreans about very myth of religion matters in relation to constitution of Korean constitution, especially for the influenced by the American constitution, simply the logic of the separation of religion and the state. But as you know, that it is very, very complicated process of the settlement of the religion and the statement, the separation issues. It is very flexible. The more I read your statement, your constitution, then I find that it is very, very difficult, very, very seasoned with things. But in Korea, they simply say that religion matters should not be in the public sector. And those religion matters should not be in the even mission schools. For the case, they get the fund. But as I said, more than 70% other Christian missionary foundation, a university, or the middle and the high school. So in reality, it's very difficult to change this whole landscape of it. But unfortunately, very simple logic came that the separation of state and religion influenced Korean society established for the neutral terminology free from religious nuance in any discourses. So they do not have much sense of the flexible, creative space. How can we, more healthy way, creating religious cultures in Korea, as previous, the Korean tradition has mentioned, even though the Christians has a lot of big mistakes. Anyway, this thing, so nowadays, the young intellectuals and those Korean government officers, they say that the religious matters should not come out in public sector and those policy makings. So a lot of big nowadays challenge. Whenever something related to Christian matters come out, then Buddhist groups say that why don't we get that fund as Christians do? So whenever something happened, the Buddhists are saying that demanding. And those Christians, they are so much, offended in the previous, government. But all the officers and the government president, he is also the elder, so they did not say anything. They simply listened. But after the new government of the present, the government, then they begin to slowly criticize. So among the intellectuals, they have very sensitive, invisible, but very possible, strong, the field to be conflicting each other. So this is very, very big issues. Then for the prevention of these matters, former government, Minister of the Education and those Minister of Culture and Tourism, they asked the Korean society for the study of religious studies. In that time, I was chair of that program. Then they said, very, very strangely, sometimes also very unfortunately, asked us to create one program for the prevention of religious conflict in Korean public sector. So nowadays, they are educate all public officers about the program of the prevention of religious conflict matters. Frankly, personally, I don't think that they should go that way, but just for the sake of the prevention of the further emerging, the reality. As you know, that the politicians are really politicians for the vote. So they really want quick, instant, the programs. So unfortunately, we have to be involved with those issues. But we are now doing another big project, not funded by the government, but funded by the neutral, the company, world companies. So this is very, very difficult issues in Korea. So nowadays, Korean, the mission-funded university, and also the middle and the high school, they are really wondering what kind of religious education they should carry in this context. Whenever something unbalanced, the ideas come out, then students very easily accusing and also announcing, and also even calling the press conference. So all these press conference, the reporters, they are very happy to have the exciting news about the religious matters, and also Buddhist radical riot groups also very exciting further about these issues distinctively come out. So we are nowadays very, very wondering how, the mission-funded schools and the universities, has been running And also, if religious education, okay, or religious identity matters, has been losing time for the educations, then why we should run the schools and the university? So that has to be respected. But these things is really coming out. And also very wisely, Korean hierarchies of the Buddhist monk, they begin to realize that if they going that way further, following the radical laity groups, intellectual groups, they have also has to be challenged by their mission works in the West. Because some Korean Christian groups, they are getting some data, very empirical research data. Then they said, if you so, you should not involve with the mission works. And also Dharma-oriented Buddhist education or universities should not teach Buddhist-oriented religious education. This is not only the problem of Korean Christianity and also Korean Buddhism, but also it is influencing also other religious traditions, including new religions, the Confucianism and also many other schools. So Confucian-oriented university we have, Confucian-oriented high school we have, Confucian-oriented middle school we have. So in this setting, okay, so nowadays some of the old monk and the Confucian followers and the Christian groups, they begin to awaken, okay, that secularism, alternative way for the secularism has to be, has to be reconsidered. But unfortunately, those people who are in the very, very important decision makers, even though they are individually religious people, but in public sector, they do not know how to handle these issues, so they easily, okay, following the secularism, logics, no longer concern about religious matters. So every Korean chaplains and also the mission-founded university and the Buddhist-founded universities, they are very, very wondering where to go. Then how can we overcome this ethos, very strange cultural ethos about religious matters? Then also we have another big groups oriented and trained in a national university. Discussions about their mission statement. But nowadays I am debunking logic, which means your mission statement is not the statement to be concerned and implemented in every university, every mission school, because your mission statement is one of the mission statement. So your voice is one of the voices. Do not think that your voice is the voice. So we are now very strongly suggesting about that logics for Korean politicians and those Korean intellectuals reconsider about the national university. As I said, still quite good intellectuals, even though they are religious people, they are trained in national universities. So this is very, very hot issues. So through this conflict between the Buddhism and the Christianity, then the religious issues is coming out almost paralleling to the global issues of religious matters through the television and the media things. Okay, so through this conflictual transition, many Korean Christian intellectuals, they also begin to rethink about their matters. So they are a little bit sensitive nowadays to their talks And there's Buddhist groups also. They are not further radically demanding about their things. Because if they go that way, even the Buddhist logic is not applicable to the general senses. So this is very, very another moment for Korean Christianity, Korean Buddhism, and also very small groups of new religions think about religious matters in public sector, not simply reducing all dimensions of public sector into the private sector. We are now in the transitional period, how to handle these issues. But if these issues would not really settle down, but it will be a very, very difficult situation. But personally, I do not invite, restrict law, emphasis on these issues. The more we are inviting the law matters, I don't think that it will be really resolved. We have to rethink about our forefathers' wisdom, how they handle these issues. How do our forefathers handle this conflict situation? I think more than the law, I think some sort of very considerate the wisdom from each religious tradition should be reconsidered very, very for the sake of healthy religious landscape of the Korea. Okay, thank you very much.